What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and in this video I'm going to be giving you guys a banner review of Legendary Seliph banner that we're getting tomorrow. So I'm so happy Seliph finally got a legendary alt. I really like Seliph a lot as a lord, and I do have him at Plus 10 Merge, the original version, and he's a sword cavalier and his art is absolutely gorgeous. I love this art. He's also a pair up earth legendary hero similar to Legendary Julia. And I'm just so happy that finally he got a chance. I mean, it was inevitable because he's a lord. He would have got a legendary alt sooner or later. But yeah, I mean, this happened later because Leaf and Julia did get alts before him. But nonetheless, his weapon is Virtuous Tearfing. It grants him +3 resistance, and if foe initiates combat, basically if it's active in enemy phase, or if Seliph is not at full HP at start of combat, it inflicts -6 attack and defense debuff on foe during the combat, and if he just hits the foe, then he's able to restore 7 HP. Now, I was definitely expecting some kind of damage reduction on Legendary Seliph similar to Divine Tearfing, because I would have easily taken the damage reduction over this. Now, this effect is also pretty good because -6 attack and defense debuff is very powerful. It makes him really bulky. We have seen that kind of effect on Legendary Chrom and Kyria, and those units are ridiculously bulky with this kind of effect, so this is really good. And the healing has got pretty good synergy with the slot B skill. Now keep in mind, the 7 HP which he heals is per round, it's not per hit. So don't expect him to like heal up 14 HP because he will hit twice. So he'll only be able to hit heal up 7 HP, and you could actually see that in the trailer itself. So this kind of weapon makes him really strong enemy phase unit, and if he's not at full HP, then he can also make use of this in the flare phase, but that is going to be a bit hard to do. His special is Ignis, which in my opinion isn't the best special for him. Like 3-turn cooldown specials are gonna be the best for him because he could run Heavy Blade Sacred Seal and he can just trigger the 3-turn cooldown special on his final hit, something like Bonfire or Soul. Because he seems like a really good user of Heavy Blade because he's going to be having high attack for sure, and he does get -6 attack debuff from his weapon. He's got distant counter, so that's really good for a tank, and he has got his exclusive slot B skill, Holy War's End. So if he's above 50% HP and if the foe initiates combat, then he can have a guaranteed follow-up attack, and he can basically have an enemy phase desperation. Now I know this description might sound a bit janky, but basically what this skill does is it is like quick riposte with enemy phase desperation. That's basically how it is. And enemy phase desperation is pretty good because he's gonna be extremely slow, as it seems from this base kit. So it's really good that he's able to have the instant follow-up attack in the enemy phase, and many times he'll be able to finish off the enemy because he's gonna be having high attack, and he does have the bulk to survive the first initial hit of the enemy. So this is a pretty good slot B skill, and I'm really glad that like he's enemy phase unit and he's not player phase, because being a player phase sword cavalier is like a death sentence basically, because you're going to be competing with Eliwood, who has got resplendent stats if you have Fey Pass, that is, and he also has Blazing Durandal Weapon Refine, which is just insane. So competing with Eliwood is like a losing battle. So I'm really glad that he is just an enemy phase sword cavalier. And here he is going to be taking the hit from this green mage, and as I said, it's like an enemy phase desperation. So he takes this hit and then he just retaliates back, and as you saw right there, he just healed up 7 HP. He didn't heal up 14 HP, so the healing is per round and not per hit. And here he's paired up with Legendary Julia, and he's going to be able to trigger his Ignis. So using this, we can try to calculate his stat spread. So he gets 33 damage out of his Ignis, and I assume that his Joint Tone defense is active and he's getting the buff. He also gets defense from the pair up of Legendary Julia. So if you subtract all of that, he ends up at like 36 defense. And by calculating against these 2 green enemies, his attack stat seems to be around like 40, 41. And he is going to be having resistance around 28. Could be as low as 25 and could be as high as 28. And he does get +3 resistance from Virtuous Tearfing, so keep that in mind. So he could cross like 30 resistance mark with that resistance from his weapon. And he's just going to be dumping his speed basically because he needs to if he wants to have good stat spread, because Cavalry BST is still quite limited. So he's basically like Reed stat wise, just high attack, high defense, workable resistance, and he does have extremely low speed, so that makes it really easy for you to double him. But in the enemy phase, he's gonna be able to, you know, just take you out most of the times before you can get the second hit, unless you're in something like desperation range or something like that. So that is Legendary Seliph. He seems like a powerful unit, but he does not seem like he's busted at all. He's basically locked to enemy phase, and when he's compared to Reed, who I think has similar stat line to Seliph, he can auto double, but Seliph cannot. And he seems very annoying to deal with in the player phase though, because he is gonna be insanely bulky, and he also has a slot B skill active. But he can be easily dealt with in the enemy phase by any kind of blue unit quite easily, especially if Seliph is at full HP, because he wouldn't be able to get the -6 attack and defense debuff then. So that could make it easy to deal with him. And impact skills, hardy bearing, null follow up are all ways of stopping his slot B skill, so you have to watch out for that if we're gonna be using Legendary Seliph. He's super good for arena scoring actually, because he's an Earth Legendary hero and he also has a 300 SP slot B skill. So I assume that his dual effect would let him score 180 BST like other Legendary heroes. So he can be really good for scoring, and expect to see him all the time in Earth seasons in the arena. So that is Legendary Seliph. Not really very insane Legendary hero compared to some of the ones which we have seen, like Legendary Chrom for example. But still, you know, he is good enough, and I'm just happy that he got an alt. I'm like super happy with this, even though this is not the most busted or insane unit we have seen. And he's a cavalry unit, so you know the BST penalty is always gonna be a bit annoying, especially when you want to tank, because you're not able to have like sky high bulk when you're a cavalry unit, because you have that kind of BST limitation. So that's why I'm saying I would have really liked like a damage reduction or something like that on him. But nonetheless, he seems powerful but not broken. So that is gonna be Seliph. I'm super excited. I'm definitely gonna be trying to pull for him, and I think he's gonna be having pretty similar stat spread to this, because it's quite obvious what kind of like stat spread he's gonna have just if you look at his base kit. So that is gonna be Legendary Seliph. Finally, he got his alt. I'm just very happy. And now let us take a look at the other units from this banner. The Legendary Grima is in the same boat as Legendary Lyn, but she's a bit better. Even though she has got outdated stat spread, and she also needs a weapon refine like desperately. At least Dragon Skin can get rid of her flying weakness, but she is still weak to dragon effective weapons, and there are plenty of those units out there. She doesn't really have that high of a bulk in today's day and age, or even high offenses for that matter, and Myr with her new weapon refine is basically the better example of a flying dragon tank, unfortunately for Female Grima. Female Grima also doesn't score that well in arena as an Earth Legendary hero, so that's another bummer. And she doesn't really have that good of a fodder. Resistant smoke can be found on Branya. And just like Legendary Lyn, whenever Grima is present in the colorless pool of a mythic or legendary banner, she tends to bring down the overall value of that pool, and people are more hesitant to pull on the colorless pool whenever she is present. I like Lyn a lot, but she's easily one of the worst legendary heroes in the game, and it feels like on any kind of legendary or mythic banner where she is present in the green pool, she like tends to bring down the overall value of the green pool significantly, and people just don't want to pull on that kind of green pool where she does exist, which is really sad because she needs a weapon refine desperately. She's just a super outdated unit. Like, just compare the power difference between Legendary Chrom and Legendary Lyn. Both of them are colored infantry archers, and it's just insane. So she basically tries to be a mixed phase unit with her preferred skill and weapon, but I mostly just use her as an arena assault unit now in the wind season, and she can be useful to take out a legendary Azura or something flying, I guess. You could also salvage her resistance and ether raids during wind season by running her with 2 airs as a mage tank, but even then there's more to be desired from her, and there are better units suited for this kind of role who are not restricted by the blessing and the season. In arena, she's also not that good for scoring and needs a dual skill. So overall, it's really sad to see the state of Legendary Lyn. She also has absolutely no fodder. Speed Tactic is available on New Year Air, it's also a Sacred Seal, and even recently now, Summer Loot has that at 4-star, who's a 4-star focus unit, and definitely easier to get than Legendary Lyn. Legendary Azura is an insane dancer, as we all know, being able to buff up an ally with spectrum buffs, and also if they are infantry or flying, she can also increase their movement by 1. and that is definitely pretty scary to face in Ether Raids and in Arena. And she definitely makes game pretty easy, so if you haven't really got her already, then she's definitely recommended to get. She's a really good dancer, and she doesn't really have much for fodder. The dual skills are just completely outdated at this point from a scoring perspective. If you already have one Legendary Azura, then getting multiple copies of her isn't really going to be doing too much for you unless you use her in your water core in Arena for scoring purpose. Maybe having 2 Legendary Azuras could be nice for Ether Raids or just for in-game content where you could just run her with a nuke or something. But because of not having fodder value, it could be annoying to get multiple copies of her when you're going for someone else. Duma is an Anima mythic unit, and Duma isn't the best Anima defense mythic, I would say, especially when Thrasir and Mirabilis exist, but he has his role, and the reason why he's actually useful in Ether Raid's defense is not completely because of his stats, but because of his attack blessing, which is just so useful, like universally to any kind of team. Everyone appreciates having more attack on an Ether Raid's defense team, and also the fact that he has got Upheaval, which is actually a pretty good skill. It does the chip damage on turn 1, and it basically lets him act as a max level catapult and just destroy a structure of the enemy, and that's really useful if you strategically place your Duma in a perfect position so that you can blow off an enemy's bolt tower. And bolt tower is basically the best offensive structure that pretty much everyone uses on offense. So using him in lane 3 and lane 4 is best, so that you could have the best chances of blowing up someone's bolt tower. And like nuking someone's bolt tower is a big thing in Astra season because the Astra mythic units Altina and Naga aren't really all that good when it comes to providing the support to the main unit. So people rely on these offensive structures basically. So Duma can be pretty useful with that, and it's even better for you if you have a max level catapult. So you could have a max level catapult and Duma on lane 3 and 4 so that you could like guaranteed just blow someone's bolt tower up, because most people do run bolt tower in those lanes. He's an armor dragon at the end of the day with really bad one movement, and it's not really the hardest to take him out, especially when Divine Fang Naga exists as a counterpart in Astra season. Still, he can be used as a Wings of Mercy nuke because he does have pretty high attack, or he could be used as a frontline unit on your defense team because he does have the bulk. And of course, DC Vantage Duma is always going to be a threat. Outside of Ether Raids, Duma is pretty nice in Melee Strike for scoring, and he does get incredibly powerful with the extra stats and stuff there. So I do have a lot of fun using Duma in Melee Strike especially. He's not really all that great as a fodder defense rest solo isn't that useful, and Bolt Fighter is present on like 6 trillion armor units by now, so that's not the rarest thing to get. Yune and June is back, and she's a dark mythic unit. She is no Bramimon, but she's an alright defense mythic, I guess, because she is a flying unit and she can have access to ground orders, aerobatics, guidance for all of the movement shenanigans, and those kinds of things can be really helpful in Ether Raid's defense. Her main problem in Ether Raids is that she's just very frail, so you need an expensive investment in sturdy impact to make her a bit better when it comes to the bulk, because she's just is so easy to get one shot by any kind of physical unit, even blue physical units. Her nuking potential is also nowhere near as good as Bramimon, but still it's decent for what it's worth with the flyer mobility that she has got. Her weapon is really easy to trigger because it works on penalties, and you can get auto double and death blow effect out of it, so that's definitely pretty decent. And her exclusive slotty skill is Chaos Named. It can be hard to trigger in Ether Raid's defense because air on offense gives resistance buff, and most people will have at least one air on their team, so it could be hard to work against those kinds of units, but still, it could be nice against like low resistance Vantage Sweepers or something like that. She does score poorly in Melee Strike, and outside of Ether Raids, her combat ability isn't really the best, so you will always have to run Desperation on her so that she can actually function in multiple combats. Her fodder is pretty underwhelming. Sabotage Resistance is the only useful skill that she has got, but it's not really universally useful like Sabotage Attack or Speed. Sothis is a dark mythic hero, and she isn't the greatest Ether Raids defense mythic, I would say, because she's not the scariest unit to face like Bramimont or Thrasir are. So she's basically a speedy tank, and she's kinda squishy at low merges in Ether Raids, which can come to bite you back. She's mainly used as a frontline tank unit on your Ether Raids defense team, but she's not really as bulky as someone like Seliph or Brave Ike, and she's not really able to get any kind of like stat increases from blessings and stuff like the other units can, like those frontline units which I just mentioned. So that is something to keep in mind, and she could be also used on an infantry pulse team, and she could be at the bottom of the infantry pulse chain where she could have a pre-charge Dragon Fang Ignis or a special like that, or even with a stance for Shield Pulse Miracle build, which is actually a pretty solid build for Sothis, which I see a lot of times in the higher tiers. So basically you could check Gale Force units and Near End Zeal Legendary Leaf and still be quite bulky, and you do have a distant counter weapon, so that's really great. Outside of Ether Raids, she is pretty good unit because she is self-sufficient because of having Sirius, and she also has a distant counter weapon that has immunity to dragon effective weapons, so that makes her a pretty good unit to use, and she's also pretty good for scoring in Mjolnir Strike. So this is not really the best unit to use in Ether Raid's defense when she's unmerged, because as I said, she needs the merges because she's the unit who uses all of her stats. At the end of the day, she still has the inherent value because of being a defensive mythic unit to provide the lift loss reduction, and having some lift loss reduction is definitely better than having absolutely no defensive mythic units, I would say. Attack speed solo is present on many units, and time pulse is present in the normal summoning pool on Lysithea, but I would argue that an unmerged Lysithea is better than an unmerged Sothis, but still time pulse is a definitely useful skill and still quite rare to get. So overall, pretty good fodder and definitely a pretty decent unit. Peony is a light mythic unit, and she's the best offensive mythic unit in my opinion. She does the role of a dancer for your Ether Raid's offense team, and that makes it so much more flexible for your team options. The Otter's buff, which you can get from Gentle Dream, is absolutely amazing for mobility, and Flower of Joy, her weapon, is good for support. She also provides Spectrum buffs from Gentle Dream, which are not the strongest because they are only +3, but still, that is definitely pretty useful. And you do get one Peony from the story, and having another one is going to be really useful in Ether Raids because 2 Peonies can make strategies like hit and run even better if you have seen my Ether Raids content. So 2 Peonies can be really useful in Ether Raids. It's same as Legendary Azura when it comes to her fodder. It's just that Peony has got a tier 4 slotty skill, and that just makes it a bit better because it's good for arena scoring mainly. So her fodder isn't really the greatest, but still at least you get a tier 4 slotty skill out of her. Zed is a really fast unit with 39 base speed and a weapon which gives him +3 speed on top of that, but the thing is that he isn't the greatest unit despite that because he only gets attack speed solo from his weapon. And when you compare him to other fast green mages like Thrusier, Legendary Seliph, Young Merrick, they just seem much better, and Zed just pales in comparison to those green mages. His fodder is top tier though with Pulse Smoke. Igreathen is also another unit in Permanent Summoning Pool who has got Pulse Smoke, but she's actually really good unit herself, and she also has other good fodder. So Zed is mainly just gonna be having Pulse Smoke as fodder, and that is really good because it's gonna be amazing in Ether Raids against infantry pulse teams who are really common. So basically you want to have Pulse Smoke on a tank so that they can deal with these kinds of nukes when they're going to be facing infantry pulse teams, and I just value Pulse Smoke alone a lot that I have given it 4 out of 5 because it's really meta influential skill against those kinds of infantry pulse teams and can definitely make your life pretty easy when you face those kinds of teams. But the thing is that the green pool in this banner isn't the greatest, so if you want to get Pulse Smoke, I would suggest you wait it out until Zed is present on a 3% banner later on, because sniping for Zed could be painful because Yune and Legendary Lin are also on this banner. Eleonora has got top tier offensive spread of 37 base attack and 38 base speed. She also has a conditional fire sweep bow effect, which is really good because it works on her speed. So basically she needs to have more speed than her foe to get this fire sweep effect, and that's really easy to do because she is going to be extremely fast and she's easily one of the best archers in the game. Now her main competition is going to be Legendary Alm, who can just out damage her, but he is Legendary Alm at the end of the day, so it is expected. She does have attack speed push 4, which I value a lot because I think it's a really good universally useful skill that can be given to any unit. It can also be used on healers, so that's basically their best offensive option, and attack speed push 4 works in both phases, and the recoil is actually pretty good to get into the range of other skills like Desperation or Vantage. And there are like 4 units who have got attack speed push 4, but only 2 of them provide additional value where you could inherit another skill with this skill, because it's pretty easy to get Dancer Elincia from the Divine Codes to have the prerequisite for attack speed push 4, and then you could inherit another skill. So one of them is going to be Eleonora, who provides speed defense ruse along with this push skill, and the other one is Peony, who has got lull speed defense. So only Eleonora has got speed defense ruse so far, and that is really good and could be inherited along with attack speed push 4. And in general, attack speed push 4, outside of being a tier 4 skill which is good for arena scoring, is just a universally good skill in my opinion. Legendary Chrom is absolute beast and one of the best units in the entire game. He's a water legendary hero, and he's the one who has made arena like such menacing place in the water seasons because he's just so powerful. He's pretty much going to be good in every single game mode in the game. He's got an armor effective bow, so as I said, he's a menace in arena because he can actually kill like green armors. It's like through the weapons triangle disadvantage. He's kind of ridiculous with that insane high attack. The secondary effect of his weapon is also really good. When foe is at full HP, he just nullifies any kind of debuffs on himself, and he also inflicts -6 attack and defense debuff on the foe during the combat, which is insane because it can stack up with the lull skill, so it makes him incredibly bulky and he hits so hard. And his unique assist skill is of course 2 Change Fate, which makes him a really scary unit to face because of the movement that he could get out of it. He essentially just refreshes himself, and that could be pretty annoying to face in Ether Raids and in arena. He's extremely bulky and hits super hard with that base 42 attack and essentially a 17 might weapon. He's amazing for arena scoring, really good for Allegiance battles, and he's good in Ether Raids whenever there's water season because he doesn't really care about chill or shrine debuffs, so maybe you could try to use him before your bolt tower goes off or something like that. Very powerful unit in general. As for fodder, 3 close counter units are seasonal, and Takumi is not in the normal summoning pool. So Legendary Chrom could appear in these banners and he could provide you with close counters, so he's good for that. Lull attack defense isn't going to be the most useful thing if you're going to be inheriting close counter to a mage, because that defense part of the lull skill is kind of useless to them. And close counter I would say is a really good fodder because there are so many units like dagger units, bow units, and mages who make fantastic use of it. Like broadly fan users who are dagger units make amazing use of close counter, and of course blade tome mages can be extremely powerful as a vantage sweeper with close counter. Mirabilis is basically the best defensive mythic unit in my opinion. It's one thing to have a defensive mythic unit on your team, but it's absolutely another thing to have your dancer be that defensive mythic unit, and that opens up a slot to run another offensive unit to create pressure for the opponent. And because she's a flying dancer, you have access to aerobatics, round orders, and guidance for the shenanigans, and those kinds of movement shenanigans are really good with a flying dancer. So that can definitely make your team's movement a bit hard to predict. She's not an easy dancer to bait because she's a melee ranged dancer. It's usually better to not have your dancers have high attack so that they cannot be easily baitable because their job is to dance. And Flower of Ease, her weapon, is a really fantastic weapon for always providing support to your allies on Ether Raid's defense. Whimsical Dream's -5 attack debuff is pretty insane and really threatening to vantage sweepers or tanks, and it also provides like a rally up kind of attack buff when you dance with her, so that's really useful. The only problem that she has is that her HP is extremely low and she cannot really get any kind of HP buffs, so it's incredibly easy to isolate her with Bridal Fiorm, and Bridal Fiorm is going to be seeing a bit more usage in Astro Season I think, because she's just been kicked out of the Light Season because Mila is just a superior isolator. Outside of Ether Raids, Mirabilis is still a pretty good dancer to be used, and she's decent scoring wise in Milner Strike. And as for fodder, the Sabotage defense isn't really all that universal compared to Sabotage attack and speed, and Defense Risk Gap is also not that great of a skill. It's a pretty decent buffing skill, but it can only buff up like a one ally at a time. So I would say that Fortress Defense Rest is the main fodder skill that she has got. And now time for the final verdict on this banner. I feel like this banner is hard carried by the red color. If it wasn't for the red color, this would have been easily one of the worst legendary banners we have got. And because like green and colorless pool seems really painful, blue is a pretty okay pool because it does have 2 dancers and Legendary Chrom, but those 2 dancers don't really have much for fodder, and Legendary Chrom is the only unit who has got really good fodder in the blue pool. Green pool is going to be carried by Sed, who has got Pulse Smoke, which a lot of people will want, but there is going to be Dud in Yune and Legendary Lin, and colorless also has Eleonora, who's really good, but Duma and Grima will make you cry. So The green and the colorless pool seem like a disaster because of the duds. And if you are trying to get Legendary Seliph, then it's probably better to get him here because the red pool seems pretty decent here. Compared to when if he shares colors with someone like Legendary Marth or Legendary Ryoma, then you're not going to be getting that much value. He could also color share with the Lif, who does have Distant Counter and Time Pulse, but it seems too good to be true. So this seems like a pretty decent one to get Seliph on. And if you want Mirabilis, then you could easily spark her because from when I'm making this video, you still have 1 day left on the book for Midpoint Banner. And it's much easier to get Mirabilis from there because you could use the spark system to your advantage after 40 summons. And you get 9 summoning tickets for that banner, so you basically need 113 orbs to get a guaranteed Mirabilis. So if you want Mirabilis for Aether Raid's defense, then go with book for Midpoint Banner instead of going with this banner. So overall, this is not the best banner because of the amount of dud units. Red and blue pool are definitely the best ones, and colorless and green are kind of underwhelming, so you could try to avoid that. So that is going to be my review for this legendary banner. I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their support. If you enjoyed this video, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And share this video with your friends who are thinking of summoning on this banner. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because expecting YouTube sub boxes to work is like expecting Seliph to die in his enemy phase. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.